Yo, is the mic on, Mike? Into that mic on, Mike, and pour us another one. Let's do it right though, Mike. We feeling nice though, Mike. Gather round, gather round. Into that mic on, Mike. Into that mic on, Mike. Yeah, Garage Drinks with Mike. Woo!
Sweet, you good?
Yes. Yeah. I want to learn heaps about you too. So will that?
I was gonna tell you because obviously you're a journalist.
Yeah.
So like, don't hold on.
Should I move this?
It moves as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Sweet.
So go with your instinct. Go with your gut.
Cool.
Like if you feel like you want to ask some stuff, ask away by all means.
Okay. Cool. Well, sorry. Okay.
It's all good.
I'll make sure.
Indira Stewart, welcome to the garage. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me, bro. I'm actually quite excited to be here.
It's awesome, little humble garage.
Yeah, I love the setup. So organic.
Thank you.
You don't need much to make something great.
No, you don't, I guess.
Yeah.
I try and trust that our content is good enough. But you have bought food.
I have.
Which is amazing. It's the first guest that's turned up with food.
Well, every talanoa needs food, so I'm like,
So
what?
true.
What's this? Just garage drinks with Mike. We need the me okay, but yeah.
So talk to me about what you've bought here today.
This is just stuff that my husband made. So he's a chef. This is cornbread, which people will know, but it's like made like keke isite. So if you're Tongan, you'll know there's like, it's kind of like pankeke for Samoans, pancakes we make in a ball shape. This is corn ribs. So make sure you try that. I'll put it in the middle for you.
Okay.
And the rest is, what do we call it? Moi
pipi.
pipi. Which is, have you watched Norbit?
Yes.
So, do you remember Respucia? And she's like,
yes.
turkey ass. Do you remember? Okay.
Turkey ass.
Turkey ass. This is Respucia's.
This is the real turkey ass.
This is the real turkey ass.
Okay.
So when Respucia did that all the time, I said to my husband, man, you need to try this, because I know Tongans do that. And so anyway, he has barbecued turkey ass.
Wow.
But it is the bomb, better than a chicken thigh. And this is pork ribs.
Pork ribs.
So
what business does your husband have?
He's a temping chef at the moment. He's been a head chef for about 15 or so years and only just starting in to do his own thing.
Right.
So he'll be around at the markets and food truck and stuff like that with his own thing called the Flying Rib. So
Flying Rib.
Yeah. So we're actually taking all the food around to our friends to taste test.
Okay.
So you give us your opinion later on. But
so this is your turkey. It's sticky. That's pretty good.
Is it?
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm pretty critical of how he does it, but
That's pretty good.
Is the sauce good?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And this is, sorry about the mics. This is honey sauce if you want to add onto it.
This is so good.
It is, isn't it? You know, it's like the perfect ratio of fat and meat.
Okay.
And I know you're really fit, bro, so this is probably a cheat meal for you, so.
Not that fit.
Yeah, whatevs. I've seen you in Nora's fit photos. Oh, man, the pressure.
Oh, you gotta live, man. You gotta live.
Yeah.
This is what living's about. This is really good.
Cool. I'm glad you like it.
That's so good.
I know, cool. Okay, great. I thought I was the only one, but I'm like, bruh. Apparently, I think they banned these in a few Pacific Islands, at least maybe Samoa.
Why?
The fattiness and, our high rates of diabetes and obesity. So this is not a really good promotion for health. But definitely, but just for the cheat meal is the bomb.
Wow, it's really, really good. Now I have to try his version of
Yes. I might pour some honey on this. You know us islanders, you always have to have food when you're doing talanoa, po talanoa.
There's like a flavour to this.
The corn rib or the keke isite?
Keke isite.
Yeah, it's made out of corn flour, so it's supposed to be like how Americans have cornbread.
That's nice.
You like it?
I do, yeah.
Cool.
I don't think I've had keke isite like this before.
Nah, it's different. He likes a lot of the Tongan food.
Right.
So he likes to try and modify stuff a bit.
And you're obviously his biggest critic, with the Tongan
food. I'm not sure. This is probably not my favourite, actually. But nice.
And your corn.
Yes, go for it. That's a corn rib.
This is a corn rib. That is different.
What do you think?
It's good.
I hope you're not just being nice, bro.
No, I'm not. This is really good.
Oh, cool.
What's the sprinkling on the top?
It's probably some sort of seasoning. I wish I knew, but I don't. And it's probably, and obviously spring onions, but
Wow. That's really good.
do you like it? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Like he stripped out part of the corn. Or has he cut it in half or has he quartered it? He's quartered
I think
it.
he's quartered it.
Yeah.
Let me just see if he texted me about it.
That's actually really good.
Sweet corn ribs, yeah.
Sweet corn ribs.
Yeah, and I think actually he said corn nuggets with honey. So this you have with honey
Oh, okay.
if you want it.
Pretty good.
Good? Good. I'm glad you like it.
I love how you're the first guest to bring food on.
Oh, I have to. I don't. Nothing against drinking, but I don't drink alcohol. It's probably maybe been 6 or 7 years. Just personal choice.
Sure.
And really, like with kids, honestly, we don't have time to recover like everybody else. So it's like no point to drink sometimes. But I do. So sometimes. So when you're like garage drinks with Mike, I'm like, oh man, we got to bring a feed. Yeah.
It's great. Also, like the choices of people's drinks when they do come on is so different, so varied. So today I've got kombucha. You've got LMP, sugar-free LMP. But I've had so many. Not two same people have come on with the same request for drinks. How's that? It varies so much. Yeah.
I saw Fial had Coke Zero or something.
Pepsi's. Oh,
Max,
sorry, Coke
maybe?
Zero.
Coke Zero.
Kevin
loved.
is Pepsi Max.
Oh, true.
Sorry,
All these athletes
other
with
way
their sugar
around.
free, yeah.
Other way around. Kevin is Coke Zero and she is Pepsi Max.
I saw Raina with her tea, and I was like, that's my jam.
Raina, cup of tea. Beulah, red wine. And a lot of it.
Crack up.
Wow. The ribs are really good.
Good. Yeah, they're my favourite. Go for gold,
That
bro.
is dangerous.
I know.
No.
He does pork ribs, lamb ribs, fish ribs.
Fish ribs.
Yeah.
How do you do fish
You
ribs?
have to fill it and cut the fish in a certain way and pan fry it. And so they actually look like ribs when they're fried, but then
Right.
it's fish. It's really, really nice actually. But ribs is his thing.
Right. It's like his go-to. I guess probably his number one passion, his main passion.
Yeah.
Because you said the stall's called the Flying Rib, yeah?
Yep. Chicken ribs. Chicken and ribs. Fried chicken is my thing, like it is for a lot of islanders. So he does fried chicken and ribs.
The food is really good. Please say thank you to him for us.
I will.
And you know my
I'm
kids
glad
will
you like
demolish most of this, man.
Good.
Like,
I'm glad.
Nothing will survive.
Yeah, that's like my house.
Yeah. Hey, it's so cool to have you here. I'm glad we finally got this happening, and amongst all the lockdowns and our crazy families and our crazy toddlers.
I
and
know.
Here you are, finally here.
I know.
You are quite a source of inspiration for a lot of, not just Pacific Island women, but a lot of people that I come across.
Oh.
So I'm quite stoked to have you on. Now, I traditionally know you probably primarily as a singer. Like back in the day, I don't watch too much New Zealand Idol, but you are amazing. Like, no, I'm serious. Like, if anyone hasn't seen Indira's version of Ilonga Hataha, which is on YouTube, do you know? I'll tell you something. Actually, that's actually how I taught my children to sing that hymn.
Oh, it's so good.
For real. Like, if you see those pieces of cardboard right there,
Yeah.
it's written on the piece of cardboard. I put the cardboard up, I put your YouTube clip up next to it, and we go through it line by line, and that's how they learnt the hymn.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Funny story about that clip, and I know Coconut won't mind me telling the story, but I was freelancing for them.
Yes.
Thank you. And there was one time I think they called me because they were trying to film a whole bunch of artists all in one day, and resources wise it's easier and it's cheaper to do that. So I think one act pulled out, and so they said, oh, do you reckon you can just do something, do anything, just anything Tongan would be good? And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. I thought I'll just choose a hymn from back in the days, growing up. So I just chose that hymn. So it wasn't really a lot of thought, like, I didn't pray about it, I didn't, but obviously it's something that was like, oh yeah, this is a hymn that, I've heard people singing and I've heard it in church. So when I went there, the makeup artist did the harmony, I did, and then the other guitarist came in and learnt it maybe 10 minutes before we recorded it, and then I did the singing, and then Islanders are so talented. They just get together, and because they're so used to, the cultures that we're in, there's a lot of performing, there's a lot of creativity quite often. So, and there's a lot of also like, when someone tells you to do something, you just do it. Everyone gets together and does it. So we all kind of just got together, did it and put it out. And I didn't really think much of it, but I didn't think about how much of an impact it might have too. I was managing my son's rugby team, and we went to a game, and this Tongan lady came up to me, talking to me about how her husband had passed away, but how they had played the hymn all the time in his final days in the hospital. And she was talking to me about, and I was so taken and really blessed by that story. But also, it's a pure example of how everything we do can have an impact, and you should never take something that you're doing lightly, because you never know how far it's going to go and how many people it's going to reach. Even just this little conversation we're having, or you go down the street and you have an interaction with someone at the dairy, you have no idea how much that will impact a person's life years on, and so that's really interesting to see how that came about, how that worked out.
That's so true. And it's interesting that you talk about, your sort of impact on day-to-day people, because I guess you don't really know what other people are going through, and just so your interaction with them might impact them in either a good way or a bad way. So I think it's always worthwhile the effort of being nice. It doesn't cost anything. It doesn't cost anything to be nice. Even when things are like stressful and busy and stuff, and you're like trying to rush and you got so many things going on in your mind, if you can just center yourself for a second, be present, say thank you to the person in front of you before you move on to the next thing in your life, I think it's quite an important thing. But it does take effort to do that, and to constantly remind yourself, like, to be present, because especially full-time working mom, of 4, like, it must be crazy with you. Like, how do you find that balance of like balancing your home life and what you do at work as well? Stressful? Sometimes?
Of course it can be stressful, but honestly, it's just love. Like, when you love people, you have a lot of grace. So when you love people at work, when you love your kids, there are so many things that can be easily forgivable. Easily, we can move on from this. The dishes are dirty, your school bag is still on the floor, you didn't even eat your lunch, everything. You have to come back to a place of love, because it's not worth sweating the small stuff. I think as a mother, though, you often have to balance it out with, you're trying to teach your children to become a better human being. So, if I forgive and dismiss little things, but I also have to try and you've got to bring consequences in so that they learn, and that's not always easy as well. It's easy to get frustrated with humans, because we're all human and none of us are perfect. The nicest, even Jacinda Ardern has flaws, I'm sure, and I mean, Clark Gayford, I'm sure, would be the first person to know. And like everyone loves my husband, or they love me, but when we're together, we know each other's flaws, we know each other's the things that get on our nerves, and so you just got to learn to give grace, just because you love, and life is so short. You don't know how long you have with each other, and you don't know how long things will last, how long your job will last, how long opportunities will last. It's just not worth it to get, I don't know. I think I'm generally pretty chill, and that is probably because of what I've been through in my own life, because now I'm just like, well, that's nothing, that's no skin off my back after going through a divorce. Like, if someone says something that's kind of insulting to me or offensive or whatever, I have been through worse, and so it doesn't impact me the same, I think. I don't know, you learn resilience when you get older.
You do. I think it's cool what you just said about you know how only your partners kind of see the flaws in you. But I really think that, you know, the partners that you're with, right, they learn to love the flaws in you. You know what I mean? Like if your partner can't get along with like the ugly side of you,
Yeah.
then it's not really worthwhile, because until you find someone that can really love, you know, that side of it, and everyone's got that side, you know, then it's not really, I don't think it's a worthwhile relationship.
Yeah.
But going through a divorce I've never been through a divorce, but I hope I don't go through a divorce, touch wood.
Yes. Touch wood. Would not wish it on anyone. Yep.
Right. And so you'd count that as probably one of the hardest things you've been through, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. I married really young.
Sure. How old were you when you got married?
I think I was 21.
Right.
Yeah.
That's pretty young.
Yeah. And it was straight off the back of New Zealand Idol.
Okay. You just finished it.
Just finished it. And and I just want to be clear about this. This is not a story of bitterness or anger or anything like that. And I got no hard feelings. You know, I was really young. The person I married was really young. And we were just two different people still learning about who we were, you know. And so it was just, I think that we just, our own insecurities, everything, you're insecure about yourself, the expectations of watching like romance on TV is nothing once you get into the grind of the nitty-gritty of having a relationship with, and everybody, both of you are imperfect and you've got your own baggage, you know. And so it was a really rough time in my life. And I also, you know, my parents were really strict Tongan parents. So yeah, we were on, this is lockdown. I was on lockdown my whole life growing up in high school. So, you know, I think when I went to New Zealand Idol, the first person to even give me attention, I was just like, you know, like, you know, right. I just had no dating experience.
Right.
And I was really, you know, in church, in quite a, you know, not a lot of people dated yet in my church. So
quite conservative. Very
conservative. People my age were really believing in purity and staying pure. Like they had some really great values and stuff, but I never had a lot of experience. And so when I left and I, you know, moved into the Idol House and I met different people, it was such an eye-opening experience for me, because
you'd never flattered or anything of other people, eh?
Never flattered. People were smoking, they were drinking, they were sleeping with each other, sleeping with the staff, you know, like, and there was like constant like backstabbing and, you know, swearing. And, you know, my parents are pastors and I'm like, I was just out of my bubble for the first time. So,
oh my gosh.
So
sorry, what year is this? What year is this?
For publication purposes, no, it was 2006.
Oh yeah.
So
I knew you were on it, but I wasn't someone that would like tune in every week.
Yeah, and fair. I think I wasn't prior to being on the show either, but so. So
wow,
funny.
that's the one hell of a culture change as well.
It was, but I am so grateful for that experience, because I was all the way over here like, hallelujah, you know, like
almost
reading
removed,
my Bible, totally disconnected. And it was like swinging from one end of the pendulum all the way to the other end of the pendulum. And eventually, through my divorce and that relationship, I kind of found a middle ground, like maybe around my mid to late 20s, purely because I had to, after learning what I learned. And I also learned how to build friendships with people that just had different backgrounds to me. That's really, really important to me, because it can be, when you come from an exclusive kind of community, you can get really judgmental without realising it.
I guess it's because you're sort of caught up in a bubble where you have your own sort of limitations and restrictions of what, and expectations of what the rest of other people should be at.
Yes,
when it doesn't meet your expectations, then it's easy to judge people. Easy to judge,
and not try and understand their own lives and where they've come from and how they were raised. And so that was a really awesome, eye-opening experience for me in that way. Now, with getting married so young and you know, not really knowing myself, by the time, so I was about 21, 22, and I had kids really quickly. So I had, probably within the span of 2 years, I had 2 kids.
Wow.
And I was 23, 24 when I realised that this relationship was kind of crumbling.
How do your kids start, like 1 and 2?
Yeah, so I think I was 5 months pregnant when I found out I was 5 months. My baby was 5 months old when I found out I was pregnant again.
Oh.
And so, yeah, it was and it was also, there was a lot of violence. There was a lot of, it was a really tough, without trying, and as you would understand, because we both got children, this is not a story that I tell a lot or one that I go into detail, because there are other people involved, like my children, and so I respect, their own story, which is a part of it. So, and with the detail that I can tell is that, there was a lot of violence, and eventually I was like, probably, I saved up for a whole year to leave the marriage. And by the time I left, I think I was about 26 when I filed for divorce, and I had 2 young kids on my back, and I had to walk into Wins and ask to get on the solo parent benefit. And there were people there who were like, aren't you Indira from New Zealand Idol? Like, people recognize me, and you're sitting there for like 2-3 hours. Anybody that's ever been in Wins and you're sitting there getting an appointment, you're sitting there and people are talking to you because you're from New Zealand Idol, because they recognise you. It was only like 2 or 3 years after, and they're like looking at you like, whoa, what are you doing in here, And it was such a humbling experience. And man, I am grateful for what God did in me during those years. It's such a dark season, but I really clung to my faith and tried to learn from it and learn who I was. And it was just what I'm doing today in my career, in my life, it was just at that point I made a decision to put my head down and just work my ass off, because I had no choice. I had 2 kids to provide for, so I went back and studied. It was there are times that I remember, like, you don't have enough to eat, like you have enough to feed your kids, and I either can spend this $11-12 on busing to uni, or I can buy nappies. Like, these are real struggles that a lot of people go through. I know I'm not the only one. And so those were choices, days that really made me have to dig deep to find out who I am as a woman, because I had to be someone inspiring for my kids, and someone that they could look to as someone that was solid in their lives. So yeah, it was good character building.
Here's to you, sis.
But for the grace of God, man.
That's I thank you for what you've just shared. It is very humbling. I've never shared this before either, but my first relationship was very similar, very, very similar. A lot of violence and stuff, and I got arrested a couple of times. I've been through anger management courses. I went through 3 times. A lot of anger management. I was in a real bad place, and found myself at Wins with 2 kids as a sole parent. I remember going up to see my case manager, right? Because the washing machine had just died.
Yeah.
I was trying to toilet train a 3-year-old at home, and he was shitting his pants all the time. There's no washing machine. I was frustrated, real frustrated. Wouldn't grant me a washing machine. I was so pissed off. I remember going back to my car, and I think I called Nora, and I was crying on the phone. I was like, all I want is a fucking washing machine. I just want a washing machine, man. Can't give me a washing machine. And what am I supposed to do, So I get that. I get the frustration.
Where are the tissues, bro?
Right behind you. I get it. Like, I get the frustration.
Yeah.
I get the thing about it is that like, this is stuff that really either makes you or breaks you.
Exactly.
Right? And you got to really like look at yourself and look inside you and either figure out like, is this all I'm worth?
Yeah.
Or am I worth more? Right. And I tell you, man, like, because I was living in Otahu and I used to push this little pram, didn't have a car.
I was in Otahu too, Panama Road,
Also,
during this time.
Texas Street.
There would have been both of us at the same Wins office at different times. Bro, that's so funny.
I used to have this little pram that I'd push, right, because I didn't have a car.
Yeah.
And the baby would be sitting inside and the other guy would be sitting on top of the pram. And I'd push them to daycare, drop them at daycare, then I'd walk across to the bus depot, catch the bus into the city, work a part-time job, bus back, pick them up, walk home. Now, one of the hardest times was when it would rain.
Oh my gosh.
And I'd be walking along Princess Street pushing this fucking pram with these 2 kids on. The traffic's queued because Princess Street backs up in the morning. No one would stop.
And you're walking past all these cars.
And you feel like people are looking at you thinking, like, they're probably not. That's my insecurity. But that's how you feel. Like everyone's just staring at me like this is all I'm worth. Like, look at that guy.
Yeah.
Like, what a loser. You know what I mean? Yeah. But all those times, like walking and pushing that pram and stuff, like I always thought in my mind, like, come on, Michael, you can do better. You can do better, man. And then I started training. And that sort of started to shift my mindset and shift because I had like a physical outlet that I could release a lot of the frustrations in my mind. And and from then I found my outlet, and that's why I train so much. Like, you may think I'm fit and everything, but I don't really do it for that. Yeah. I do it as like my stability. It's like my sort of anchor, and everyone's got their own anchors that they use. But I hear everything you're saying, man. And I can understand like where you come from and why you work so hard and push so hard. Yeah.
And I get that too. I might not look like I train a lot, but I got into a just training mode because it was an outlet. And then I met my husband because he was competing in bodybuilding back then. So we, same kind of interests at the time. But I can see, how you'd use that as an outlet. But at the same time, what you pointed on and at that time, you feel like you already feel like you are crap. You feel like a loser. And, your friends are moving on. They're doing stuff with their careers. They've got great jobs or whatever. They're driving in nice cars or whatever. You already feel like crap. Even though inherently, I think back then, deep down inside, I knew that I was better than that. I knew that this is not me, but people don't know the real me. When you're struggling. I'm grateful for the people that stood by me back then and didn't judge me, or sometimes they'd come around. Oh, my older sister, we are really close, but there's a lot of times that we've clashed, as you do with siblings, and she would just randomly come pop around the house sometimes with like 4 or 5 bags from Pack and Save, shopping. It was just things like that I don't forget now. And man, when you do move forward, and we're still moving forward, like this isn't it for either of us or where we're at in our lives. When you are moving forward, you never forget those times, and I don't take what I have right now for granted, because I remember, we've got food here and that's awesome, and I'm thankful for what God provides and what the hard work that we have, but I don't forget those times where I'd just eat my kids' leftovers, because I could afford to feed them, but not really feed myself. So I remember those times, the sacrifices that you make, and you just kind of never forget it. There are times now when I'm on TV, we do a story about whether it's on poverty or something like that, and there's just a different connection because you've been there, and when you've got a struggling mum on who's talking about how she's struggling, and it's powerful to have that connection and understand. And it's not saying as well that it's bad that if you don't have that connection, because everyone's got a different journey. Yeah. But it has empowered me to tell stories differently because I've been there. Yeah.
Talk to me about what was it like, because you came from like kind of like that conservative, circle of being like a pastor's daughter. What was it like amongst that community when you were suddenly divorced, alone, and a solo mum?
Really hard. I don't think that people meant to ostracize me, but I've definitely felt that way inside. Yes. And I don't...
Why do we do that? Why do we do that to
honestly, yeah. We talk about... I'm going to get real here.
Yeah. That's what this is all about. Because, there's so many things... I'm a proud Tongan, right? I'm born and raised there. I have the flags behind me. Yeah. Like, I stand for it. But at the same time, you can only be proud of your nationality if you're going to stand up and call out the things that are wrong with it at the same time.
Yeah, totally. We talk about love. We sit down and we sing Ilonga Hataha, which is literally about the lost sheep that Jesus leaves the 99 sheep to go look for this one lost sheep. He, to me, the character of Jesus is the most inclusive person ever, the most forgiving and graceful person who looked beyond people's faults. Then my experience at that time was like, people talk about love, talk about forgiveness, and once you're in sin or you make a mistake, it's a totally different reaction, you know. And for me, it was really important. It was really important for me to hold on to my faith, but I had to separate it from my belief in the church as an institution, and also the way that culture is tied to that. Because, you know, divorce can be still now quite shameful in our cultures. So even though I sat down and I told because I never told my parents what I'd been going through because I didn't want to hurt them. So when I finally decided, okay, this is it, I'm going to leave, I finally decided to have an honest conversation about, well, I'm going to leave and this is why. And I remember my mother, because my dad was ready to just pick me and the kids up and go, you know. My mother was like, are you sure you've tried everything? Have you prayed? You know, have you asked God to help? You know, and with all, and this is not trying to be critical of my mother, but like many islanders in the church, with all good intentions, just wanting the best for you in terms of the picture of what they think the best is, you know. So it was a real big learning curve for all of us to have those confronting conversations about what's good for you may not be actually good, you know, what you think.
You've
might
always
be good.
been quite close to your parents?
Yeah, but it's been a journey because I've changed so much even as an adult, and I went and I had an estranged relationship with my father at the time that I was married in my first marriage, and that's because, you know, there's something about dads though, they know. In the very first moment, you know, I brought this person home and my dad was like, I was going on my first date, and I was doing the respectful thing, you know, like bringing someone home to introduce to your parents, and my dad said to me, you walk out that door, I already know I know this person, I know what kind of guy this is. You walk out that door, I know exactly your life is going down, you know. And he was like, don't do it. And so from the get-go, you know, I was just like, oh, you know, not listening, young little girl, like, oh, Dad, you don't even know him, you know, all that, whatever. And I just kept pursuing this thing, but my dad was always like, don't do this, please don't, you know. So it was a tough time during our relationship because we never agreed about it. But it really taught me a lot about, it ended up being, you know, the situation got quite so volatile that my father called, they live in Australia now, and he said, if you're not here in 2 weeks, I'm flying down to pick up my grandkids. That's what it was. So, like, they needed me to be in a safe place, you know, and with the kids. And so I packed up everything. I left, you know, the rental property I was in. Like, my cousins had to clean it up, and I had to sort out, you know, a rent arrears and all that with the landlord, and that took me a while to sort out. But I literally packed up everything, went to Australia, and went back home and lived with my parents. And it was like being in high school again, living under their roof, to be honest. It was quite humbling. And also
this time, it's not just you got two kids.
Yeah, I got 2 kids. As well.
And there's there's also the extra dimension of, like, when you've got your kids with your parents, your parents want to try and raise your kids as well in a different way to how you would raise your kids.
But you are their parent. And you respect them, you know. And so it was a really growing time for my family on a lot of different levels. Also because, you know, they're pastors, and here I am, their daughter coming home with a solo mum, 2 kids, you know. And so I was going to their church, and so I have to say that their church really embraced me at that time. They've got a really beautiful small little church actually, and they provided for my kids while I was looking for a job. Never said a word, you know, no complaints, but they were just happy to have me home and safe, I think. And it was, to be honest, the first part of me being able to heal properly, to have that support around me, for me to sit down and actually figure out what I was doing. So, and that's where essentially my journalism started. Right
then. What sort of jobs were you working when you first turned up in Australia?
So I did do a bit of journalism in New Zealand. Like when I was 15, I did the Tangata Pasifika thing, present for Polyfest kind of thing. So I think I was always supposed to be a journalist, but it took me a long time to find my way into that platform. Because, looking back, even the school magazines, I always wrote for the school magazine. It was like one of my biggest things that I was excited to do every year, and anyway, I think because I grew up in a musical family, I just went and did New Zealand Idol and I did a music degree. So when I went back and studied, I did communications. But when I went to Australia, a friend of my dad's worked at the ABC in Darwin. So she was like, oh, I'll hook you up with just come in and do an internship and stuff like that. And that's how I kind of started. And then I went to Melbourne and worked there as a producer in one of their programs. But it was a time of you're working through that industry, but you're still working out your own stuff in your personal life. And, when you say you never know what someone's going through, that's something that I hold now, because I don't think, people would say things to me and they never really knew what I was going through in my own life, that I was like, a solo mum trying to find my own feet. And I'm still creating stories every day, or I'm still doing this, or I'm making these phone calls. But we all have our own stuff that we're trying to work out. So that's why it's important to have grace and compassion towards each other. Sometimes people come across rough, but you don't know where they've come from or what their morning's been like. And so for me, I think I have a lot more compassion now because of that time of my life. But it was good. The journalism, I'd never realised how much I enjoyed telling stories until I started getting into that and realising, our cultures, we come from people who are orators. You go to weddings and funerals and they can stand up and recount the history of your lineage and go all the way back to, the first king. And so it's a natural thing that we're gifted with, I believe, is the art of storytelling. And so that played a lot into the way I was telling stories because of what I've seen and how I've grown up.
Right.
It naturally comes out in my storytelling.
Right.
And I didn't really, it's not until you start doing it in practice that it kind of pulls out of you. So I've enjoyed finding my feet as a journalist. But mainstream is different too. I've learned a lot being on main. I've only ever worked for mainstream, mostly for full time. Yeah.
Right. When you were in Australia, were you, because you said you were producing, were you also in front of the camera as well, or were you mainly behind?
I was in front of the camera then. I was producing for other presenters, and I was producing stories for their programs too. That's what I was doing in Australia. And then I came here to New Zealand and I went to RNZ. And there are no island, maybe very few islanders there. And also our island community don't really listen to RNZ. So when you talk to people they're like, oh, what you work for Tongan Mother? I'm like, oh no, it's Radio New Zealand. And they're like, huh? So it's very, very different telling stories about your community knowing they're probably not listening.
Right.
So it was a real challenge and a mission for a lot of us back then to get a more diverse audience. And it's growing.
What's it like working in the media, especially here in New Zealand? And how do you feel about the representation our Pacific Islanders get? Because obviously you work hard out now in what's really mainstream. We've had poor representation. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm not gonna. That's just, everybody knows that. And even not just Pacific, but even for Māori, I just have to say, coming here, and it's one thing to fight for your own representation, and then another thing to realise that even the Indigenous people are still having to fight for their own voice, their own narratives, and that's just shameful. So I have a lot of respect for tangata whenua. I think if we can't get it right for them, how are they going to get it right for us, for migrants, for the rest of us, So I found that with my Māori colleagues, we often connected really well because we were fighting the same battle quite often in terms of telling brown stories and how they were told. So representation has always been an issue in terms of being diverse, but we don't, there is, I think the 2018 census showed that people identified in New Zealand with more than 165 ethnicities.
Wow.
So if you think about that, and the representation you're seeing on mainstream, we are so far from the goalpost. You know, we're better than where we were maybe 10, 15 years ago, but there's so much work to do. So you think about our Asian communities, our African communities, there are so many great communities that we have in New Zealand that still don't have a voice on these platforms. So it's been awesome to work with Māori colleagues and fight for the same thing. I have to say that in mainstream, where the majority of people are Palangi, I'm appreciative of my colleagues who were always listening, or who would ask us, if they were doing a story, let's say about Polyfest or something, if they make an effort to come over and say, is this how I say this word, or can I say this, does this make sense, or if I write this, that's what makes a difference, because we don't expect them to know,
Of course not.
But when you don't try and listen or try and understand, that's when it's not cool. It's not cool.
It's arrogant.
It's arrogant, yeah. And when you don't care about listening either. So there was a producer, I was presenting a mainstream news program on RNZ, and we had a producer who worked with us, and we had this story about this Tongan boy who had lost his leg in a car crash. It was a bus accident, Tupo College, I think, a few years ago. So anyway, it was a Sunday, so I was essentially not working. But our shout out to Matthew Turnison, is one of the brothers, Palangi brothers. But he said to me, and what I would have expected is that he would have just called somebody and got a comment.
Right.
But he went and found the mobile number. I think I passed on some contact, and he then went on and found the mobile number of this kid, showed up to Ponsonby Church, the Tongan Methodist Church in Ponsonby Church, to look for, and to actually connect. And that kid was keen to be interviewed anyway. But I called him on a Sunday, I remember, and I was just like, oh, bro, if you want me to come in, just let me know. Are you all right? And he was like, oh, no, I was just about to call you because I was just wondering, is this all right, what I'm wearing? And then I was like, what are you wearing? And I was like, where are you? I thought you were in the studio. And he was like, oh, I'm just at this church, and there are all these people that are wearing mats and stuff, so I think I'm at the right place. And then I was like, did you go to the church? And he was like, oh, yeah, is that all right? And I was like, bro, I can't believe you went to the church. I didn't know you got. And then I was like, okay, hold on, what are you wearing? Yeah. And he was like, oh, I'm wearing this shirt and I'm wearing pants. Okay, cool, you're wearing pants. You do not go there, mutu and just rock up with a falani, just singlet. I was like, okay, cool, that's cool, you're wearing that. And we just sorted out some other stuff. But the fact that he was asking me, is this appropriate? Knowing that, you're going into another community and another culture. And so that's what I have respect for. And I have a lot of Palangi colleagues that I've worked with who try and be respectful, including when John Alomu's funeral was happening. They were going to the big church in Mangere, and going to the services, and they wanted to know what, and I was like, dress in black, shirt, pants, I can give you a ta'awala. We've been to Tonga, and I've given an Australian correspondent a ta'awala. When people try, that is what matters. But when you're sitting there and thinking that your own worldview is the only thing that matters, that is when
it's a problem.
That's problematic. Yeah. And we're all living in this space together. We all need to respect each other and acknowledge the presence of other people.
Yeah, I think it's so valuable what you say about working together with the Māori. It is quite a close bond that we have, and even though some of their fights may feel different, but essentially it's the same indigenous fight, for a voice and for acknowledgement.
Yeah, and what I've learned recently is I never really thought about this with our Māori, brothers and sisters. But when we talk about diversity, we group them in with us. But I went somewhere and Stacey Morrison was speaking, and she said, if you're talking about diversity and you're including Māori in that term, you're essentially inviting us to a party that is in our own house. And when she said that, the penny dropped for me, because they they are it in terms of we're here in their country, and it would be the same if we were in Tonga and other people were coming in. We would feel like, well, this is our country and you're coming in, and yet sometimes, quite often, when we're doing the diversity discussions, we're classing them with us as if they were other migrants, but actually we're here essentially on their land.
Definitely their land.
Yeah, and that's the thing I think that other diverse communities also need to remember too, and I respect that. I respect that we're the position that they're in rightfully should be, and that also that they have been treated really, it's just been unjust, the way that they've been treated, considering this is their land.
Yeah. That's a battle that's ongoing and will be ongoing for quite a while, I feel. But I think that slowly things have started to change. And I hope that things change faster because, stuff that's happening out of Ihumātao, stuff that's happening in Wellington is just it's beyond shocking to me, And I took my children out there as well because it's quite important for them to understand, where we live. We are guests. We are guests in this country of theirs.
Totally.
And if we don't acknowledge that, then there's no real point in being here because this land, these are the original people of this land.
Yeah, totally. And can you imagine having to fight for our own land in Tonga?
No, I can't,
I cannot imagine your family being, your generations of your family being moved out, forced to move out, beaten, raped, forced into poverty, and now you're at where you're at because of what has happened to you. We have not had that battle as Pacific people, and Tonga hasn't been colonised officially like any other the country in the Pacific. We've still had our monarchy. We weren't ruled by the English or by German like Samoans were. So I still feel like now what I'm learning when I want to learn more about Māori and their struggles is that, man, we it's nothing compared to what they've been through, And so I always have to remember that when we're fighting for the narrative, more importantly for them in their own country is it's huge.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you have any hopes or ever want to go back and work in the media in Tonga?
Always. That would be the dream, to just go home, to raise your kids there. I mean, that would be the dream. Yeah, I've always wanted to.
I'm sure you could. You've inquired?
I haven't yet, and that was also part of the conditions when I got married to my Palangi husband. It was like, there will come a time I will want to go back home. I was born in Tonga, and so and he easy as would love to go live in the Pacific, but I haven't really inquired. But it would just be the best thing for my kids too, to go there and be immersed in the culture and actually learn the language properly. And you were raised in Tonga.
I got some friends that work in there now. Some of my classmates work in the broadcasting over there.
At TBC or?
I'm not sure actually. I just know that some of them are reporters.
Yeah.
And have been working there for the last few years, covering stories and stuff.
Yeah.
I'll hook you up.
Hook me up, bro.
Whereabouts in Tonga are you from?
Tatako mo Tonga mua. My mum's side is from Tuanuku and Vava'u. And I always have to mention my grandma's side, Makave. So
Vava'u.
Vava'u.
Beautiful. Yeah.
My mum is Tongan Fijian though, so my Fijian side is Kandavu.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you were born over there before you came over here. So how old were you when you came here?
I was young, I was about 2 or 3.
Right.
We went back often. And so my sister and I were born there, we came here, and then my parents had their other 3 children here, my other siblings.
So there's 5 of you altogether?
There's 5 of us.
5 of you together. Oh, yeah. And do you go back often?
Yeah, we do. Well, obviously not with the pandemic recently, but in recent years try to go back at least once a year or once every 2 years and try and use work as an excuse and cover some stories there. But
was your dad a minister from there and then he came over here and continued?
Nah, I think he was a music teacher from Toloa. So, and then came here and joined the brass bands here. He joined Howick City Brass Band and then the New Zealand Salvation Army Brass Band. And he was like, Spot the Brown dude in those brass, because they were all like older Palangi men.
Right.
And that was our first experience of interacting with another culture, because I remember we would have to go on their camps with them, like
brass band camps.
Brass band camps. And we were like with all these Palangi kids, and they were like such a beautiful community.
Yeah.
Like racism is a struggle for a lot of us, but I was glad that was my first early experience, because they embraced us.
Right.
And I mean, there's this guy called Ron Higgins. I think he's about 97 now.
Okay.
And he taught my dad how to use a knife and fork. And and let my dad borrow his car, because my dad was catching 3 buses from work to get to the band practice.
Wow.
So Ron found out about that, and Ron was like, "Oh, look, you can use my car," and then all the stuff. And then he noticed. My dad tells me the story that the first
Where was
night,
your dad staying?
with my uncle in Balmoral, Dominion
Okay.
Road. And so my dad says the first night they had like fish and chips or something, and then the next night, it got to like the third night, they had like steak and something, so you need a knife and fork, and Ron noticed that my dad wasn't eating, and he was like, "Are you not hungry?" I said, my dad was like, "Oh, no, I'm sorry, I love imitating my dad," but my dad was like, "Oh, no, I'm okay, thank you," and then after a while, Ron figured out he's too ma to like eat, because he doesn't know how to use a knife and fork. So he's like, "Oh, I'll show you, because one day our band is going to go out for dinner and you might need to know." So he showed him how to use a knife and fork. My parents named my brother after Ron, good old Ron.
Wow.
But that was a beautiful experience that we had of people embracing us, to be honest, as migrants. And
It's that comes up so many times when I have people across the other side of the table, is the journey that our parents made across the ocean, and their integration into the society, which is a hell of a mind trip itself. It's changing cultures and adjusting, but that doesn't just happen for us, that happens across the world.
That's true.
Having to integrate into a Western society.
I mean, how old were you when you came?
I was about 16.
Wow.
16. So when I came over, Tonga was yet to put up a 7th form, so I had to do 7th form over here.
Right.
Yeah.
So did you come by yourself or with your family?
I came with my family, but I left my family. Like I was 16, like my dad died when I was 10. And so I was the oldest son. So at about 16, I wanted to be away from my mom, from my family, And so I went into 7th form in Palmerston North.
Far out.
I know, and my mum and my siblings were all the way up north. But I'd go to high school by day, and by night I'd be working at McDonald's. I was determined, and it was probably one of the worst years, because that real culture shock, like, really hurts.
Yeah.
It's so different, and you get treated. I felt the treatment around me was so different. It wasn't what I was used to.
Yeah.
I guess it wasn't what I expected.
Yeah.
But what was I supposed to expect?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So really the unknown. Did it make a difference that your mum was Palangi?
Yes, it did. I was just about to say that, because it's quite different if you're half caste.
Yeah.
Because at least I have the advantage of coming over here, unlike your father, and I can speak the language. Do you know what I mean? That's already puts me like a foot inside the door, but it's so different for other people that come over here and they can't speak the language. They're learning to speak the language. That's that's another challenge in itself. So it did make a difference. But see, whereas I grew up in Tonga as a hafakasi, like I was always seen as like a parangi loi.
I call my kids parangi loi.
But coming over here, I'm just seeing as a brown person. Do you know what I mean? Like there is no, and that's a challenge I think that a lot of half castes go through, like trying to knowing which side to identify with, or being stuck in the middle. It's never really a challenge that I've had myself, but that's because like I've always been really strong and staunch in my Tongan and quite proud, and I know that so thoroughly that my Palangi side is just like another. So they're both two sides to me. They're like two rivers that flow together. And so I'm very lucky that I can flow quite naturally between the two.
That's a luxury.
Yeah. I wish there's things though that I do that would surprise you though, that I find hard. Like I find it hard to pass on the Tongan language to my children. Whereas like like when I speak Tongan, my Tongan is like old school Tongan, like I have no accent to it. It's my Tongan's perfect. I'll say it.
I bet.
It's really good. But I find it hard to speak Tongan to my children, which is why we went through the whole thing about the hymns, because I thought that would be the best way to pass on the language, is if they start singing songs, then they get the rhythm, and then they start to pick up the words, and I can translate what the words mean. But that would be the best way to pass it on, because naturally I don't speak it to them.
So you don't even say like ha'o?
Nah, I don't. My wife encourages me all the time to like to do it more.
Why
I don't know.
Does it feel comfortable or?
I don't know. It's something that I've almost got to force myself to do. I don't know whether it's being married to a Samoan as well. Like, obviously, sometimes I feel like I don't want to do things that she wouldn't understand. But she's always like, no, you should speak more Tongan to them. But that's a struggle that I have in my own household.
True. That is so interesting. I'll tell you, when I was married to someone, we made an agreement that he would speak Tongan to our kids and I would speak Samoan, just so we could learn each other's languages. But I think now I find it hard too, because also you just want to get things done, like rather than have to explain 5 times. So you're like, just do the dishes. But I do, sometimes like it's the little things like ha'u or, no, you say goa weni when, like, my son, I'm like, Isaac, and he's just like, what up? And I'm like, no, bruh.
How old is he?
He's 11 or he's 12. And I'm like, you say goa when you don't you ever say what up to me again. So it's little things like culturally I'm realizing now as they get older, like, fuck up and all that, and telling my daughters not to go into my son's room. Like, that was a big thing, in my house, and when my brothers never came into my room. My dad, I never saw him come into my room. Probably the furthest is he'd stand by the door and tell me what to do, or like, put your bed over here or move it, but he'll never come in, like those are the values that we grew up with that I'm realizing I don't want to slip, but I want to make sure that my kids understand. For all our non-Tongan listeners out there, can you just explain please the concept of the tapu between like the brother and sister and how it works in the household? So you're not even sitting in the lounge together watching TV together as tapu is not, it's disrespectful. So if my brothers were watching TV in the lounge, if I came in and I wanted to watch TV, my brothers would get up and walk out.
Why is that?
It's just
I want to hear you explain it.
It's just out of respect, because they respect me as a woman. They respect
in case anything comes on the TV that's disrespectful. Yes,
that too. And it's not uncomfortable. It just avoids the awkwardness, the uncomfortableness, and I suppose it's like extra hardcore safe protocols, like
it's a real sacred ancient tradition that's withheld between brother and sister. And brothers, once the sister hits puberty, the brother in Tonga normally has a hut outside where he moves out to and lives out there.
I did not know that.
Growing up in Tonga, man, we go around like so-and-so's hati, so-and-so's hati.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So boys would have that, because once the girl goes through puberty, I think, the sons get shifted out of the house to give her privacy.
Yeah.
Do you know, you probably don't know this, but when I was growing up in Tonga, the TV, like, because they got their own television station, right? They would censor the stuff that would happen. Nah, for real. So just in case, like, because this is Tonga and everything's so sacred and stuff, so like you'd be watching a movie at home, right? And a couple would go in a kiss and the frame would freeze. Literally.
I do remember this. I have seen this in Tonga. It's so funny.
The frame would freeze like this far apart. And obviously, like, they're kissing.
Yeah.
And then the frame would click back and they're like, back into conversation. And that would happen. Like,
skip the whole thing. Yeah. No, I believe you. I remember seeing this. And even the ads are so, like, wholesome and all that. We used to laugh about that with our cousins. But even, like, I think we were on Messenger chat, and sometimes it translates if you're talking in Tongan. There was this funny story, like my sister, I think, was like something mocking someone's mahi, which is underwear. And then it's totally translated undergarments, like really, like everything is a different level of respect there. But it's something that I value even more now as an adult. And I wish I could teach, like, when I was younger, it would annoy me. It was like extreme. It'd be like, like, just Dad, can you just come and carry this thing? You know, my dad would be like, okay, you know, like, you just stand by the doorway and talk to me, or I'll be like, oh, just come in, like. And so I never really understood it growing up until I was older how important that was. And there are certain things I don't even joke around in front of my brothers. They get uncomfortable and they'll leave. You know, if you like certain, there's a line of even when you're joking about things or conversations. And it's not that we're not close, but that's just the way you're raised. The respect. Yeah.
When I was going to Tonga High School in fourth form in science, I think it's fourth form science, that's when you have to have like, you start going into biology, right?
Wow.
Before we would go into...
How did they do that?
Yeah. This is how they do it. They before the lesson even starts, they just ask who in this class is related. Hands go up, and then they'll ask all the whatever one of you guys have to leave. So it's between brothers and sisters and cousins as well.
Because those are your you treat them like they're your brothers and sisters.
And so you'd see like these kids sitting underneath the tree because they can't be part of the same lesson, and then they'd have their lesson separately. This is the sex talk, basically the sex talk. You know, like and like the biologics. The biology of like how everything happens, and and so that's separate like cousins and stuff. Even in school.
Wow.
I can't imagine that happening here.
No, I know. And man, I look at my kids, I'm like, y'all don't even know the half of it. That is so interesting. We've made it a rule now, like, you know, my son doesn't go into my daughter's rooms and my daughters don't go into his room. But they are yet to understand like the depth of why that is, the value of respect of whakaapapa. But yeah, it is something I wish that my parents were around, living closer, to help pass on as well. And you feel that responsibility, including with the language, to pass. They know a few words, you know, but I want to have a conversation, and I miss that.
Right.
They're like, you know, growing up in your home and just your parents having a small conversation with you, and even like pōtala noa, you know, like at night having a iputi and sitting there having a full-on conversation Tongan. I miss not being able to do that in my own home. So that's one thing that I'm challenged with on how to do it. I don't know.
On anything like integrating into like a Western society, there's going to be things that you sort of lose, that sort of drop away. And I've found that like so many times, like over in Tonga, like you're always in contact with your family all the time. Here in Auckland, like it's very different. It's very different because you got such busy lives. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is a good and a bad thing as well, because like over in the Pacific, it's much more quality time than it is. Where it's over here, everything goes so fast and can go so fast, and you get so caught up in what you're doing or what your children are doing or what your partner's doing in your own lives, that's hard to stay connected to the rest of the extended family. And I think a lot of Tongans just kind of accept that. You know, as part of integrating into like a Western society, because the expectations here are like so much higher, and the financial demands are so much greater, and so the pressure is always on, which puts stress on families and stuff, and so it's very, very different.
Yeah, totally. I mean, is it possible? I feel like sometimes I'm losing my language slightly because I don't get to practice it a lot.
Right.
Unless I go home to my parents, then, you know, I'm picking it up like back in the day.
Right.
But what kombucha are you drinking?
This is... Do you want some?
No. I can't do the taste, to be honest.
This is raspberry lemon.
Oh, okay. You do you, boo, though.
Hey, when you asked for this, I haven't heard of... I didn't know they did a sugar-free LMP.
Oh, it's the bomb. Pour this in a wine glass, and it's like you're having wine anyway.
Really?
So, yeah. Thanks, bro.
Do you miss not drinking?
Nah, don't. I had a good time. Like,
sure
definitely had a good time. And the last time I ever drank, was my colleague Leilani Momoisia with her hens night.
Okay.
And Johnson Royala, who was mixing everyone's drinks, and just went hard out. So obviously, and I was like training and eating clean back then, and it had been like maybe a year since I drank. So I was really lightweight. Right. And so it did not take long, and I think we all got kicked out of the karaoke bar. But it was a good night, but I was smashed, and it was such a good night that I was feel after that. Like that was enough for me.
How old were you then?
Oh, it was only 6 or 7 years ago. So maybe 28, 29. Yeah, but yeah, I had enough. And Now I think it's more like it's not practical.
Right.
Really, like
Haven't got the time for
I
it.
don't have the time to recover. I don't have the time because if I drink on a Friday night, I really like at the age that I'm at as well. I'm gone for like Saturday. Because
Wow.
I'm just like I feel like I'll still be functioning, but
Yeah.
you feel so wasted and you want to like go to sleep like early that night, and then Sunday. Like the weekend is the only time you have to recover before you're back to work on Monday.
Yeah.
So, and the weekend also as a parent, like you either got kids sports or it's the only time you can spend with your kids, and so
You're
I
going to make
don't-
the most of it.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
really want to be recovering.
Yeah.
I'm fine sober, to be honest. I think I'm a good time sober anyway.
I think you are too.
So I don't really need it. But yeah.
What sort of training do you do?
Because my husband used to do bodybuilding, I do quite a lot of weightlifting machines, like pin loaded machines. I
Yes.
do like plyometrics,
Yes.
moves and exercise. I used to do a little bit of zoo with some of my friends when
Body weight.
yeah, but so that was cool and that was helpful in lockdown to go back to some of that stuff. But I enjoy pin loaded machines and working up progressively, like sets, supersets, and yeah. And I like learning different new things. So I go on Insta and find out different, especially in the lockdown, you had to be creative with stuff that you could do at home.
Yep.
So it was really cool to learn how you could do your hamstrings using a chair. Different things that you could do at home.
Yeah, I think everyone gets hella creative during lockdown time. And Auckland has gone through sort of some of them been mini lockdowns.
I know.
But I still feel quite grateful that we are now back in level 1
Yeah.
and that we are New Zealand. I know a lot of people get frustrated with the constant lockdowns and stuff, but it is what it is, man. Like,
Yeah.
what would you prefer? Because I know a lot of parts in the world that look at us very enviously
Totally.
and are very jealous of what we have.
Yeah.
And even though sometimes it's a mini lockdown, it's worth it in the long run.
Yeah. It's just a weird year, eh?
Strange.
Don't you miss home? I am dying.
Miss home.
Like Tonga. Do you like...
Oh,
I am dying to go to the islands.
yeah.
I really love Niue as well. Niue is a place that everyone should go.
Yes, I've been there 3 times. Yeah.
I love...
Yeah.
I don't want to say it's my favourite place because I love Tonga. Of course I love Tonga. But literally is one of the best places I've ever been. Because it's so
the
quiet.
pace.
The pace.
Yeah. See, that's that thing about like they're not the Pacific doesn't have the same financial stress
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
New Zealand has. The pace is at your own pace.
Totally.
Tongan time.
Tongan time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Over in Tonga, see it because every family has their own sort of plot of land.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
there's always going to be food
There's always
for the
gonna-
family,
yeah.
and so everything else just sort of falls secondary because
Yeah.
it's needs and wants, And
You realise how much is not really necessary when you
100%.
go back there.
when I used to work for Pacific Beach Street, I used to go around the
yes.
Pacific, and every time I'd go to like a Pacific island, I'd see like it really is the comparison of like the quality of life. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
over in the Pacific, I feel there's more quality in life, even if there aren't the opportunities, which is why our parents came here, for opportunities
Yeah.
for their children. But the quality, though, like you got
Yeah.
to really question, like, is the quality over here better, or is the quality over in the Pacific
Yeah.
better? There's always going to be that question. How you want to raise your kids as well. Growing up over there, I always idealized that I'd like to take my kids, have kids back there and raise them there.
Yeah.
But when I look at the opportunities over here,
Yeah.
the opportunities over here are so much greater. So it's always, yeah.
And that's partly why I haven't gone back sometimes, purely for those reasons. It's a trade-off. Like you're having to trade off so many different things in terms of their future as well and what they might do with their lives. It's hard, but at the same time, I'm grateful for what we have here as well. It's a great country to live in, and I love the community that I'm in as well. So, yeah.
Hey, the job that you currently do, it's a pretty early start, eh?
Yeah.
What time do you guys have to be in?
I'm in at about 5 a.m, which I
Okay.
don't think is that bad.
Yeah, I think radio is a bit earlier, eh?
Yes.
Yeah.
So when I was presenting a news program at RNZ, which was a 5 a.m. show, and so we were in at like about 3:30. Yeah, so
That's rough.
leaving home at 3. It was totally like I would leave in the middle of the night. My family are like snoring, you know, and it's a weird feeling leaving in the middle of the night.
So what does that mean? You're in bed by 7 or 8?
Oh, yeah, I should be. I should be, but who does that? Honestly, what parent does that? But, so that's not realistic. But I try maybe like.
So you'd be in bed by about 10, 11.
Yeah, more like it. I mean, I'll try and be in bed like maybe 9.
So you obviously don't need much sleep.
Nah, and I honestly.
Some people do, and some people need less than other people.
And I take a pre-workout in the morning sometimes for the show. I take one that is cognitive, like good. There are like beta-alanine, I think it is, that is good for cognitive function and energy boost. So I don't drink coffee either. I'm not a coffee drinker. So that helps me through. And I take magnesium. So if I get a good solid 5 to 6 hours, I'm good. That's all I need.
Right.
But yeah, probably like 8:30, 9, I'll be in bed. And you know, the kids are still walking in and out of the room. They want to come say goodnight. They pick the best times to come and tell you something really, you know, deep and question you about things. And I'm like, I really need to go to sleep, but okay, I'll tell you about climate change right now. You know, but that's parent life, you know.
It's non-stop.
Yeah, and you know, having toddlers too, so you can't. And I'm still breastfeeding my baby too, which is something that I did by choice, want to do. So you're juggling a lot of things, you know, and then so 5 a.m. is actually a sleep-in for me from the job that I came from before.
Right.
So 5 a.m. is all good.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're enjoying it?
I'm enjoying it. Yeah, I am enjoying it. It's great doing the newsroom, but I miss the storytelling. I miss being a reporter.
Right.
I loved storytelling.
Right.
Yeah.
So literally, like when you're in front, are you like reading off a teleprompter?
Yes. I don't memorise the whole bulletin off by heart, as some people would believe. I'm reading off a teleprompter.
And you seem to have a great team around you as well, which is always good.
Yes, yeah. So we've got a great team of producers that are writing up the news as it breaks, you know, and developing the stories through the programs. I produce some stories too for the show. Sometimes I co-host, so it can be a mix in the job, and that's cool. I'm enjoying doing a mix. I enjoy producing a story, to be honest, for other people to do the interview. I didn't realise how satisfying that would be for me. So that is a part that I enjoy.
Being in front of the camera and to such a massive audience here in New Zealand probably comes with its pros and cons. Do you get much negative feedback from? Because I know a lot of people that. Man, I'll just be honest. The people that take the time to comment on stuff,
Yes.
like if you got the time to comment on stuff, then okay, I know how important this is to you. But do you get a lot of negative feedback come back at you, and how do you deal with it, if there is any?
I haven't really in this current job. Not that it doesn't exist either. Right? I mean, possibly my producers don't show me stuff they think I don't need to see. Or that, like, you know, they've told me that it's all been good feedback. I'll tell you one thing that kind of flooded my social media inbox. It's not negative, sorry, but I had decided to stop straightening my hair and wear my hair natural on air, my natural curly hair.
Okay.
And I had so many people email me about, oh my gosh, you know, and you know, you never know the little things that matter to people. Like they weren't listening to the news, but they were looking at my hair. But that's really important to people. And you know, women that had been straightening their hair for like 20 years, and then you know they're like, okay, I'm not going to straighten my hair anymore. What product are you using? You know, for me, it was a journey of embracing just my natural beauty or whatever. You know, my natural hair, because you know I'd always straightened my hair because I thought my Tongan afro is just not pretty. You know, you grow up, you don't.
Why did you think that?
Well, you're just conditioned, you know, conditioned by different standards of beauty that you watch on TV and the media, you know, and I'm putting my hand up as part of the media. Like, I mean, do you see anyone reading the news with an afro? Do you see anyone reading the news with long hair? Most of them have. No,
I don't.
Yeah.
But I personally wouldn't think anything about it.
No.
It wouldn't stand out to me or anything.
No, and I think also being a man, it's different because it's not like you guys are being told how to have your hair or you know, like kind of thing. And then but when you're a woman, I think you notice when you're in the job, just an expectation to have different standards.
Right.
And I'm pretty grateful that I was supported to just have my hair, because I actually had not had anyone with curly hair before.
Okay.
I think bar one newsreader, which was maybe 20 years ago, I think. And so it was a journey for me because, the reality is most of the majority of the women in my community, my Pacific community, don't have straight hair, straight hair. They all have different textures in the hair. And I kind of was like, here I am waving the flag, representing Pacifica, and yet I'm still conforming to something that is not us, And so I'm going home every day, and my daughters are like, oh, can I use your straightener? Oh, they're coming to that age because they're adolescents now. And here I am going, no, you're you look beautiful the way you are, and I'm preaching this to them, and then I'm getting up on TV every morning with straightened hair, So for me, I think it got to a point where I was like, it's not worth the compromise for me as a mother and as a woman representing my community. It was big enough for me, growing up as a brown girl in New Zealand, if I had seen someone that looked like me on TV, how much it would have meant to me back then. And so I think now, if there are young girls with not straight hair, and people say it's just hair, but it's your heritage. You're wearing your heritage on your head, and this is a really double sacred part of our body in a lot of our Pacific cultures. And I personally, because I knew that a lot of newsreaders had short bobs, and so I went and I knew I was going into this job with long hair, and I've grown my hair for the last 5 years for my father's putu, because my father's been sick for a while. So that's the Tongan protocol. So my sisters and I decided when my dad got sick that okay, we start growing our hair now. So it's been like 5 years of doing it, and grateful
to be cut.
Yeah. Because the more dramatic the cut, it's kind of a portrayal of your respect and offer for the deceased. And so that was a decision that my sisters and I had made. So when I came into the role knowing that my hair was different, it was quite a step for me to even just ask, is it all right if I just wear it like this? Sometimes, And I was really lucky to have that support. Like, it was different. There were a few conversations because it was different, and a few conversations around should we leave it long or should we, and I was like, no, I'm not cutting my hair, and my manager's like, yeah, don't, if she doesn't want to cut it, she's not cutting it. And I had that support. But it's interesting that we're having these conversations in 2021,
Yeah.
And it's not that.
Do you think 10 years ago it would have been a problem?
Yeah, I think 10 years ago would have been different. It would have been,
if you couldn't make that decision.
Yeah, I can't say. What I do know is that there was a specific presenter for not the same TV platform, but in New Zealand, that wore her she had ulufisi, like Fijian curly hair, for like an afro, and got lots of complaints about it, and that was from viewers. And I'm not saying that management had a different view, but it was just people that were viewing TV. And for me, I think it was also like, if you're on a mainstream platform that majority is Palangi, and if a lot of your audience is Palangi, and they mail in saying, this is too messy, this hair or whatever, that would have said something different for me.
Right.
But the fact that everyone emailed in and was just like, oh my gosh,
that's great.
# free the curl,
right.
That's what people were, and my news managers were backing it, which I didn't know how that conversation was going to go, so I was quite grateful for that. But it's another level in my own journey of just being authentic, being who you are. Like, I'll tell you the story. I know this is just here, but it matters for a lot of women. It's
not just here.
It's more than
I have daughters.
Here.
And
yes.
If what you're saying, like, really is, so important for a Pacific Island woman, then it's not just here. It's
not just here. Like, you go back to, if I go back and look at my New Zealand Idol videos, everything of my hair is straightened.
Right.
And I did it consistently. Like, I probably didn't go like a week or two without straightening my hair. And when I met my husband, I mean, my ex-husband had never even seen my real hair. When I met my husband now, when we were dating, he said to me, I really want to see your like natural hair. And I was always like, oh, no, you'll never see it. And then he was like, if I don't see your natural hair by the time we get married, I'm going to hide your hair straightener. And so anyway, first week of being married, I went and had a shower and he hid my hair straightener and went to work. So when I came out, I was just like texting her out, where did you put it? Blah, blah, because I was going to go sit my license too, or like renew my license. So I had to get a new, and anyway, it was gone for like, I almost whooped his ass, like I was like, oh no, you didn't.
That was a brave man.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know, but like, thank God for the grace and love that he has taught me. But honestly, it was so like, and it made me realize too, like, why am I so like this about, why can't I accept my own, natural attributes and that a lot of us island women have. So my husband's like, oh, you should leave it out like this all the time. And I'm like, oh, don't even talk to me. It took me a long time to kind of accept that, but this is now a part of my journey where I'm learning to embrace my authenticity because it matters, because I'm on a platform. And so for me, it matters even more so now, being on a platform, that if there are other young women that I can represent too, Yeah, funny.
I would never hide my wife's hair straightener. Like I value my life too much.
Bro, exactly.
Of all the ways that I could die, that's seriously a way I could die. But
I know, man, the naivety of my, because I think also being bilingual, he just didn't get it, didn't understand, and so which was a good thing. It was a good thing for me, because I was finally able to actually see how I was perpetrating those standards on myself. And, you kind of talk about, you preach as a woman, like we should be able, feminist, women's rights, and we should be able to wear whatever we want, and then you're doing it yourself like every day, so it was a good reality check. And not everyone is in that. If you want to straighten your hair, straighten your hair. Sure. Like it's about choice as well. It's the power to have a choice. Yeah,
but also having the power to have that choice on the platform that you're at. Really sends a clear message out to our daughters. Yeah, that they are fine just the way they are.
Yeah, totally.
Because man, like today with TikTok and like Instagram, they're already bombarded with like so much crap.
Exactly.
About like you should look like this, or you should be like this, or you're gonna be cooler if you do this. And it's like, it's crazy. I don't know if I could grow up in today's day and age, and sometimes I worry a little bit about them because they're growing up in such a different world.
I know.
We were in our generation. We watched the whole phones being introduced.
Yes.
Introduced. And I remember when the first iPhone came out, I was like, why would I get that? Like my fingers wouldn't be able to like do the touch screen, and here I am with like, with a touch phone. But just the amount of technology that's available to them is they already got enough pressure around them.
Yeah.
Being on a platform, right? Obviously, does that automatically make you a role model? And how do you feel about that? Yeah.
How do I
or have you felt a responsibility
absolutely.
To be a role model?
Absolutely. And I also realize it's a privilege, and it's not one that I take lightly. You can feel however you want to feel about it, but if you have people watching you, man, you better represent. Like that's how I feel about it. Like I want to represent my community in the best light that I possibly can, because we've had enough of being misrepresented, and so this is an opportunity to show excellence in being brown and proud. Flip, man, where are the tissues? Because it matters.
It matters so much.
It matters. And it's not in an arrogant way, like, I know where I came from and my journey to get to where I am. So I'm not arrogant about, I'm grateful to be where I am. But at the same time, like we deserve to be a part of that platform as well. I mean, in another level as well, a lot of these platforms are taxpayer funded. And so you have all these communities paying tax for this content and they're not watching it or they're not being represented on it. And that's not cool. That's not fair, So it's really important to be inclusive, for a lot of these platforms to be more inclusive, to be challenged to be more inclusive, to represent, one thing that one of my bosses, Graham Muir, said, that we want to look like New Zealand, So when you're up there and that's what it's about for me, even with here, is like, I want to look like the community that I come from. And I want to make sure that this is representing a standard of excellence, empathy, intelligence. And this is not being arrogant, but I want to be the best journalist I can be, so that people know that that's possible from my own community.
Well, if you don't have that, then if you don't want to be the best yourself, then you'll never be sort of driven.
Yeah, driving. We're still Bobs at heart.
We really are. We really are. Something that comes to mind, talking to you, and I hear it thrown around too easily these days, is the term iconic. And I think of you as I think you really are iconic, because an icon to me is someone that's kind of leading from the front. I think you're very lucky to be on the platform, and I think you think so as well, the platform that you are at the moment. But your consciousness about yourself and what's behind you I can't discount that at all. And I think you're an amazing person.
Oh, thanks, bro. If you're always doing something for yourself, or doing things for yourself, living your life for yourself, that's cool, right? You do you. You are going to go. You'll always be limited to what you go for. That's the reality. But if you are living for reasons bigger than yourself, or for a purpose that is bigger than yourself, you're always thinking about the impact that you're going to make, or you're always thinking about opening the door behind you, making sure it's left open for other people to come through. You always have to. So, if I'm reading the news, I'm not just thinking about, this is my news bulletin for 6:30. I'm remembering who else is going to come behind me. And man, better get trained up and get up on that platform, you guys are next. That's how I feel about it. I have had people do that for me, and some of them Balangi people that have opened the door for me and said, you should be up here too. You should come and work here. You should come and do this. And I'm grateful for it. Sometimes if you don't have someone opening that door for you, it's really hard to get through. And so I am... And it's part of also being a migrant and pioneering your own way sometimes, is that you don't want, I don't want my daughter having to go through that same struggle of here, if she wants to become a journalist. I don't want her feeling ashamed or having to correct narratives about our community. I don't want her to be having to do that in 15 years' time, and so we do it, and I'm not doing it for myself. If I was doing stuff, I'd rather be comfortable sitting on my couch at home. That's if I'm thinking about myself, and I'd rather be doing that. But if I'm thinking about other people behind me, even as far as my grandkids, I don't want them to have to be overcoming the things we're still fighting for now. And so it makes it's worth it to live for something greater than yourself, I think.
I love that you're Tongan.
Yeah, me too.
How important do you think it was, this is slightly off topic, but how important do you think it was for Mate Mā Tonga to really come through Auckland and really sort of change almost how New Zealanders saw Tonga as a country?
Yes.
I think when Tonga played against the New Zealand team in Hamilton, and that stadium was pretty much flooded red. In New Zealand, in New Zealand's own backyard, this has happened, and it's become, they've made it their own home ground.
Yeah.
How important do you think that was for New Zealand as a country to all of a sudden see Tonga as in a very different light?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it was important for our kids, you know, like my kids really started picking up on how proud they were of where they came from. And even they're still learning a lot about, you know, the origin of where they're from. And so for that respect, I was really, because we didn't really grow up with that same pride,
Right.
you know, in our, well, you know, I mean, in my generation, it was very different in terms of people were mocking you if you were fob, they were mocking you if you didn't have the same clothes or whatever. And so I think we were trying to, a lot of us were trying to attain to be a little bit more, I don't know, westernized or, you know, established in this community. And so when Mate Ma'atonga, that movement came around, the amount of pride that it brought to life in our Tongan community and our Pacific community who jumped on as well was so important for us as a people, to recognise who we are and be proud about it, loud and proud about it. The other thing is, you know, we have this mentality when you come from like a village community, when one person wins, all of us wins. You know, we share in that victory. And that was really, really evident with Mate Ma'atonga, is that, you know, it doesn't matter if you didn't care about the league before or whatever, if you're Tongan,
It's not about the league.
It's not about the league.
Yeah.
You are down at Mount Smart, or you are, you know, driving through you know, Otahu, yeah, with your flags and everything, because we're all winning, you know. And that's the whole thing about being conscious of who's coming behind you. When I think about, you know, if I'm on this platform, if I'm winning, we're all winning, you know. And if John Olomo's winning, we're all winning. If Mate Ma'atonga win or lose, actually, just being on that platform and highlighting who we are all winning. And that's the important thing for Pacific communities, is that that's how we band together. And it's so, I love that, you know, like I love that we're so collective as a culture like that, because we move together, we do things together, we connect together. And so that, as a Pacific person, being in environments that are mainly not Pacific, sometimes you feel lonely, but then sometimes you remember that actually, like, just being here means that we all win.
Yeah. That's one of the best things to me that struck me about the Mate Ma'atonga, is that even when they lose, the sense of unity is still the same, the support's still the same. And I think there was a semi-final where they lost against England, but still it wasn't, there wasn't a feeling of being heartbroken.
Yeah.
Far from it. There was just a sense of, like, you know, being part of something, being part of a community together, and being present together, and being able to represent your culture on this, you know, on that platform together.
Yeah, totally.
Win or lose.
Win or lose.
See, that's quite a unique thing, because I think a lot of serious sports teams, when their teams like win or lose, it makes a difference in how they're going to react.
They're devastated.
When the All Blacks lose, it's a problem. It's
exactly.
very different. It's very different. So you're like, when Mate Ma'atonga win or lose, it's very different. It's always like that sense of community.
Yeah, totally. And it was beautiful to show that to the world, that's how we support each other, and even still honouring the other team, the other winning teams, and how our players did that, how they were respectful and honourable, like that. That made me remember, man, these are our values. Like, these are the values that I love. Yeah.
Mate Ma'atonga team obviously is an amazing team. I've watched many games of rugby league. That's probably the first game I cried at. I watched them win against New Zealand. That was just first time my kids have seen me cry in front of watching a game. It meant so much. Because I remember, like, growing up in Tonga, I remember, like, getting up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, going to my neighbour's house that had a television, standing outside their window, watching through the louvers, watching the World Cup, watching Tonga first play the All Blacks, like in the UK, I think. Like, all those things, they accumulate, you know, and because and rugby's so important to Tongans over in Tonga. It's such an integral part. It is here in New Zealand as well, but over in Tonga, it means so much, and people try and follow the games. And we never had a television, so I'd be watching it at my neighbour's house, like standing outside their window, watching it through the louvers. But it's an accumulation of all those things, and for them to finally beat New Zealand, you know, was just such a massive moment.
It's just so true. It's an accumulation of stuff that is built up in your life experience that we all got to celebrate in that one go. Celebrate or grieve together, but do it together. Yeah. You know, It's so true.
And without negativity.
Without negativity.
Without having to put other people down.
Yeah, but Tongans know how to party, man. Like, I remember, like, when we go to Tonga, the block parties that they have.
Yes, yeah,
I'm like, man, you guys do not know what a party is. Like, that is massive, and I love the way they celebrate.
Yeah.
And so to be able to come here, and you got your crazy aunties up on stage dancing to Baby Shark, like all that stuff that was coming out, that I was like, that's the Tonga that I know, that I grew up with. So it was awesome to be able to do that without shame and be proud about it. Yeah, so special.
How do you feel about your children moving forward into the future?
That's a loaded question.
Yeah, it really is. I like asking it because people interpret it different ways.
Yeah. It's really uncertain for me, to be honest. And I'm still, like, I look at each of them and I kind of wonder, I wonder what you'll be like, or I wonder if you'll be into this. And I like try and bribe my kids or use it as a punishment.
I think we all do.
To make them do certain things. Like, my mum paid me $20 to do my first singing performance because I was just too shy. Like, I was gonna cry, And so $20 is a lot of lollies when you're like a kid.
How old were you?
And so I was 10.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I sometimes try and do, to my kids, if you don't do this, you're gonna have to join this team. Or, you're gonna have to play this sport. And so they end up having to do stuff because I'm pushing them into it. But it's just because I want them to try anything and everything to find their place. When we were growing up, it was kind of like, the expectations that were on you, especially when you're a migrant, certain jobs is, doctor, lawyer, or teacher, or whatever, those are respectable professions or something. I don't even think my parents thought about, if I wanted to do something creative, my parents didn't really want me to go down that road, like music. Why not? Money. It wasn't maybe stable kind of income or something, to provide.
It's not a real job.
It's not a real job. I hate that. I know, but then, man, that's some of the best times I've had is being creative, and it's really hard to suppress it when you're innately creative. So I think, but being a journalist though, my dad used to, because I was so like whanonga talanoa when I was a kid, and so at Whi'ilo, and so that's like nosy and listening to other people's stories for the non-Tongans. So he would always be like, you should be a reporter because you're so nosy, and so I think maybe naturally I was always supposed to be a reporter. But yeah, it's interesting, like we were limited in our options, and now I really want my kids to just try anything and everything and see where they go. And I'm this far along in my life, which I think I've got a long way to go. I realize how money isn't the thing that makes you happy. It's like the relationships you have, the connections that you have with family, with your colleagues. And so money doesn't matter to me for them as much as I think it did for my parents, because they struggled a lot, providing for us. And so, there's that pressure that's kind of taken off, because I'd love for them to find their own kind of creativity. But yeah, it's a different world. Like, there's so many new career pathways too, and technology and things like that. So yeah, but it's scary. I don't like when I think about their future. You try not to worry, but you do.
I think it's normal for any parent to be anxious.
Yeah.
About
exactly
what's going to happen to their child, and also there's only so much that you can protect them as well.
Yeah.
And especially going through kind of the things that you've gone through as well.
Yeah.
Would be a real eye opener. I was going to say, when you were talking to me before about, coming from kind of a sheltered way of living when you were growing up to going through your first marriage, and those are two very big extremes. Does that make you want to parent differently?
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah. All due respect to my parents, but definitely. I mean, I wish they had certain conversations with me that probably would have. And, I know they were doing the best they knew how from how they were raised. But, conversations about relationships would have been really, really helpful before I, dated people or whatever. Or conversations about, just my value as a woman, or even in being an independent woman. Those things. I mean, even showing affection. I don't know. I know your father passed away when you were young, but I don't know if your other Tongan elders, because there's this meme. I heard them talking about it on UFM the other day. Island parents, they don't show affection, and then 10 kids later, boom, So I never saw to this day, I've never seen my parents hug or, kiss, or even a kiss on the cheek, And so when I grew up as an adult, I didn't know how to show affection in a healthy way, And so those are things, or even to communicate it verbally. And so those are things that, and they trip me up. They say they don't seem as significant when you grow up, but as an adult, they tripped me up.
Well, it's mixed messaging. It's,
yeah,
it's mixed messages. It's and you're not sure, but you're never sure how your parents really are behind closed doors.
Yeah,
how they are just with themselves.
Yeah.
But I guess my parents were sort of semi-affectionate with each other. But keep in mind that I have a Palangi mother.
Yeah.
So it's different. I do know kind of what you're talking about, though, and that's quite a sort of a staunch Pacific, maybe not just Pacific, but it's quite a staunch old school way. Should I say old school way of seeing things? I'm definitely not like that with my children and how they should see relationships and healthy relationships, and it's also important to talk to them as well about times that me and Nora might argue, and explain to them it's healthy, that's normal. It doesn't mean it's not a bad thing. You know what I mean? Because you can only shelter them from so much. And I have this really strong belief as well that even though they are all my babies, but I'm actually raising separate people. I'm raising people that I want to be
that's actually
knowledgeable in the community when they grow up.
Yes.
So I can't be too attached because they're going to make their own decisions. They're going to make their own mistakes.
Yeah.
But I'm raising separate people, you know, and I've always got to sort of keep reminding myself that otherwise I get too attached and they're my babies, and you get attached to their mistakes as well, and then you get too involved and too upset when they make mistakes. So they've got to feel free to find their own feet, make their own mistakes. Sometimes it's real painful to watch them make their own mistakes. And you really want to say, I told you so. You didn't listen when I told you the first 3 times. This is what happens. But, sometimes you just got to live and learn. And also, I think going through the things probably that you and I have gone through as well, sometimes the strongest thing you can be is just be there.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes when people go through toxic relationships and are in really bad places, they can easily cut off or isolate themselves from their closest family members because they're so caught up or wrapped up in what they're in, and it becomes toxic. So it cuts off the outside world. But if you're always there to just support either your brothers or sisters, no matter what, or whoever you know, or your best friends that are going through things, and even if they kind of feels like they're cutting you off, that's not about you. It's about, unless it is about you, then there's a problem. But if you're always there for those that you love, no matter what they're going through, then at some point, man, they'll come to you and they'll thank you. Yeah. Because you just never know.
You never know when they'll need it and when they'll come back too. Yeah. I think, having different values and different fears than my parents did for my kids, one of my biggest things is that I want them to be hardworking and kind. For me, there was always pressure on what my grades were and things like that, and we moved all the way over here, so you have to make it worth it, and so you have to study, so I was always pressure in doing well in school, but I always try and tell my kids.
That's a lot of pressure to put on.
Yeah, I know. We moved all the way over here for you, so you better not come back with a fail. So but the pressure was real, I think, for a lot of migrants and children of migrants. For me now, my kids don't really have that pressure, but I always say I don't care if you're top of the class, but I want to hear from the teacher that you worked hard. If I hear that you slacked off, or you're just lazy, or you talk to, you're distracted, that's when I'll be disappointed. But I don't even care if you're top of the class, but you were still lazy. That I'll still be disappointed. I want you, and I don't care if you're the bottom class. If the teacher said you worked really hard, then I'll be really proud of you. I just want you to give it your all and make the most of it, and just give your best every day. Me personally, I sleep better at night knowing that I gave my best today. And so I want them to get into that kind of mind frame. And I think it's so important to learn to be kind and compassionate and empathetic, because it doesn't matter how rich you are, how smart you are, if you're an asshole, you know, like, that's just miserable living and miserable relationships for you. Like my children, and now I've learned this in my life too, I will get the most satisfaction out of life having good relationships with people and treating people with respect, and it's learning to be kind and gracious and compassionate, and you get less pissed off, like when you're in a mentality of being kind, and because you realize, well, everyone's human, it's all good.
Yeah, you get less caught up in people's crap.
Yeah.
And you don't take things so seriously and so personally all the time, you know, like
and you don't take offense as
so easily.
Yeah.
It's quite interesting listening to you talk about that, because I have had that conversation with quite a lot of people around our age, and it makes me sometimes wonder, like, because that's never really a conversation that my parents would have with me, or that I'd hear like other parents have with their children that are my generation. It feels like it's like a natural sort of evolution of of not just coming over to like a Western country, but the natural evolution of like how we start to like raise our children, you know, instead of it just being the bare necessities and doing your best to succeed. You have to succeed, whether you're happy or miserable. You have to pass into like the way of thinking of like just do your best. Yeah. Instead, you know, that old church saying, "Do your best, God will do the rest."
Oh man, we know it well. Like.
I heard that all the time when I was growing up.
Yeah, totally. As a child, for you growing up, now that you're a father, are there, and you know, and I mean this I'm asking with all respect, you know, to your experience. What's it like in terms of, because you have very few memories of your father, I mean, up until a certain age limit, you know, your father parenting you, like now that your kids are at adolescence or around the age that you had lost your dad, is it a very different experience?
I actually have many I remember a lot of stuff growing up with my dad, and I was very, very close to him. So my dad, suddenly, like, just dropped dead at 41. He was on a work conference. He was the manager of the water board in Tonga. He had gone over to Taiwan, and he was at some sort of conference. And he was in his hotel room, just dropped dead, and it had been the build-up of inside his veins, I think, of from eating fatty foods.
Wow.
Yeah, and so the blood wasn't flowing well enough to his heart, not pumping well enough around his body. He was 41. Wow. Now this is a man that didn't drink, didn't smoke. He'd regularly sort of go for runs, but the food that we ate in Tonga wasn't the healthiest. Yeah. And he was a big guy as well. But my memories of him, like, I have heaps of memories of him growing up, and they're all great memories. I think, man, to be honest, man, I think my dad like gave me a hiding once, which is almost unheard of.
Yeah, totally.
You know, which is almost unheard of, and it scared the shit out of me because he was a big guy, and I was a little kid. Now that I'm a father, I told my son the other day when I was driving him to rugby training, because every now and then I try and have like just real conversations with him as a man, you know, as a young man growing up, asking him, is there some times where you're not happy about yourself, or there are things about yourself that you don't like? Just talk to him about stuff, just making the effort just to talk. Do you ever have thoughts about hurting yourself? You know,
wow.
Just be real, like, because you understand that these are kids that are growing up, and they're growing up faster than us.
It's a different time right now.
Yeah. But anyway, and then while I was talking to him about this, I was like, you realize, you know, that when I was your age, my father had died, he'd just gone. And he was like, oh yeah. And I was like, so when I tell you these things or talk to you about these things, they're quite important. You can always be open about stuff, you know, like about things that you probably don't want to talk to me about, but you can always be open about stuff that you're feeling, or it's quite important to talk about stuff, because if you don't talk about stuff, you always end up holding it. And I used to hold a lot of stuff. Yeah. So yeah, I guess it impacts my parenting that way, but I seriously did miss having a father. And when I was growing up through my teenage years, I'd look at other guys that had their fathers be present at like sports things and stuff, and be quite envious that they had that. But I got used to it, you know. I just got used to like I don't have a dad. My mother never remarried, she never had any other partners, that was it. And so
and did she just choose to stay on in Tonga for a few, because it was a few
Yeah.
years until you left.
She did. She thought it would be easier for us if she kept us in the same environment for as long as possible
Right.
before exposing us to New Zealand.
Wow.
And she had that point of view because she thought it was quite hard for people that are brown skin in this country.
Wow.
Yeah, and
So she was aware.
Yeah, so she held us there for as long as she could. And then we came over. And then once I was over here, I realized why. I could see. But I never, I didn't understand it when she was trying to explain it to us when we were in Tonga. I was like, let's just go to New Zealand, man. Have some chocolate, heaps of cars. That was all the innocence.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so she made that conscious decision, and which wasn't the easiest decision because she didn't really speak Tongan fluently. It wasn't. She's obviously a Pālangi over there. Pālangi is solo mum as well. Solo mum of 5 kids. And I just thought that she'd just try and hang on as much as she could. So we lived in a couple of rental properties. My father's family was really, really good. They helped us out a lot. But it really showed, my sister was head prefect of Tonga High School. Then I became head prefect.
So your sister's older than you?
My sister's older than me, yeah. So we always had that push for that drive to be better, be better.
Yeah.
You are better. You know what I mean? And,
Yeah.
see, I went into the arts, but very differently. My mother never questioned it. She just supported it. And sometimes I wish that she had said no. Sometimes I wish she had been like, no, Michael, don't do that. But it's been a blessing in disguise. That's how I met my wife, and that's why I am where I am today, doing this with you.
Doing this, yeah.
So everything, all our mistakes, everything that happened in life, all those little things, they all happened for a reason.
Yeah.
If they didn't happen, we wouldn't be the people that we are
That's so
today.
true.
We wouldn't be where we are today.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't be comfortable with ourselves the way we are today as well.
Yeah.
Because you see so many people that I see it a lot, people are not comfortable in themselves, and so they reflect that out onto other people, and they say certain things, and you're just like, okay, this, you do you.
Yeah.
That's okay, but just be happy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that are unhappy that reflect it onto other people.
Yeah.
But it's great to meet someone like you that is putting out a positive message, and such a strong message for not just our Pacific Island girls, but also our sons as well. So I really want to say thank you, Indira. Thank you for the food. Thank you so much for coming on board. And
My pleasure, my privilege, honestly, my honour to be here. I was really looking forward even to being interviewed by another Tongan. That is different, and that's special to me.
What makes it so
honest.
different?
Oh man, it's just understanding is one thing.
Yeah.
I knew that you would get some, and also I've said some Tongan words here in this interview. That's something rare that I don't. I'm always conscious not to do that, but I've the freedom to be able to do that and be a little bit more myself. It's been really awesome. And so I appreciate it, bro. Yeah.
Thank you.
And learning about you too, because I know you have a powerful story. Yeah. And the whole blended family thing, the solo parent thing, is different, knowing that you can tell your story and someone kind of understands about that space in your life.
Yeah.
So I've actually shared details here that I wouldn't have shared on Women's Weekly or any other article, but here in Garage Drinks with Mike, I'm sharing it because it's a different level of comfortability. When you know that someone understands that space, actually. So thank you for providing that space.
You're very welcome. Indira Stewart, everyone. Malo pito.
Malo.
Yeah, Garage Drinks with Mike.